Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the stars pass by through the massive viewing window. 3 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council, and Jake still could not believe it was real. After 40 years of careful contact with alien species, humans finally had a seat at the table, with the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The bridge hummed with quiet activity as his crew monitored their course toward the Council's central archives on Nexus Prime. Ambassador Lisa Carter had requested this mission personally, wanting to download historical records that would help humanity understand their new role in galactic politics. Jake trusted Lisa completely and knew she had worked harder than anyone to make this alliance possible. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Zalani ship approaching our starboard side," Communications Officer Pete Williams announced from his station. Jake turned to see the sleek alien vessel keeping pace with them, its hull gleaming silver against the darkness of space. "Put it through, Pete," Jake said while straightening his uniform. The main screen flickered and showed the familiar face of Zalani Commander Thex, one of the species that had guided humanity through the complex process of joining the Council. "Captain Morrison, I hope your journey proceeds smoothly," Thex said in his perfectly translated English. The Zalani had been humanity's first alien contact and had proven to be patient teachers about galactic civilization. "I wanted to personally ensure you have everything needed for your research mission." "Thank you, Commander Thex," Jake replied with a smile. "Ambassador Carter is excited to dive into the historical archives. This information will help us avoid the mistakes other species made when they first joined the Council." "Indeed. Learning from history is most wise," Thex agreed, though something in his tone seemed different today. "I have uploaded additional access codes to your systems that will allow deeper research into archived materials. Please use them freely." After the transmission ended, Jake felt a small nagging worry but pushed it aside. The Zalani had never given them reason to doubt their friendship. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh appeared at his elbow, holding a datapad and looking concerned. "Captain, something strange happened during that transmission," Danny said quietly. "When Commander Thex uploaded those access codes, my systems detected an automated data packet that came with them. It looks like encrypted communications between Council members." Jake frowned and took the datapad to examine the readings. "Could it be some kind of administrative information we're supposed to have?" "Maybe, but the encryption is military grade," Danny replied. "I ran a basic analysis and found references to something called Project Containment and multiple mentions of humanity. The timestamps show these communications are only a few weeks old." The worry in Jake's stomach grew stronger. "Can you break the encryption?" "I'm working on it, but it might take some time," Danny said. "The good news is that whoever encrypted this didn't expect it to end up in human hands. They used older algorithms that we've actually seen before." Jake nodded and handed back the datapad. "Make it your priority, Danny. I want to know what Project Containment means before we reach Nexus Prime." Over the next 6 hours, Jake tried to focus on routine ship operations but found his mind wandering back to the encrypted files. The crew noticed his distraction, but knew better than to ask questions when their captain was clearly troubled. Ambassador Carter spent most of her time in her quarters preparing for the research mission, unaware of the potential problem developing. Danny finally called Jake to the engineering section just as the ship's night cycle began. The chief engineer looked tired but determined as he gestured toward his main computer terminal. "I cracked the encryption about an hour ago," Danny said. "Captain, you need to see this, but I have to warn you that what I found is going to change everything." Jake sat down at the terminal and began reading the first communication. The message was from High Council member Vorthak to the Zalani Command, dated 3 weeks earlier. Jake's blood went cold as he read the contents. "Project Containment proceeds as planned. Human integration phase nearly complete. Subjects remain unaware of true purpose. Recommend acceleration of timeline given rapid human technological adaptation. Sterilization protocols should begin within 6 months to prevent unforeseen complications." Jake's hand shook as he scrolled to the next message. This one was from Zalani Command back to the High Council. "Human military capabilities exceed initial projections. Recommend increased monitoring of their industrial sectors. The species shows dangerous levels of innovation and aggression when threatened. Previous projections of easy containment may prove incorrect. Request authorization for enhanced surveillance of Earth defense systems." "There are dozens more like this," Danny said softly. Captain, they never intended for humanity to really join the Council. We're being set up for extermination. Jake stood up slowly, his mind racing through the implications. Show me everything, Danny. I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. For the next hour, Jake read through communication after communication that painted a horrifying picture. The Galactic Council had identified humanity as a potential threat almost from first contact. Human adaptability, technological growth, and unpredictable nature made them too dangerous to allow free development. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. Humanity would be allowed to join the Council and settle 3 designated worlds. Over time, resource restrictions and technological limitations would weaken human civilization. The final phase involved releasing a bioweapon disguised as medical treatment that would sterilize the entire species over 2 generations. According to the files, the Council had used this same strategy 17 times before against species they deemed threatening. Each time, the targeted civilization had trusted their alien benefactors right up until the end. Danny, how many people know about this? Jake asked after finishing the last file. Just you and me, Captain, Danny replied. I haven't told anyone else, not even my assistant. Jake stared out at the stars through the engineering section's small window. Everything humanity believed about their place in the galaxy was a lie. The friendly aliens who had guided their development were actually planning their destruction. The wonderful future they had been promised was nothing but a trap. Captain, what do we do? Danny asked. Jake turned back to his chief engineer, and Danny saw something in his captain's eyes that had never been there before. It was rage, pure and cold, mixed with determination that would have made their enemies reconsider their plans if they could have seen it. We're going to Nexus Prime as planned, Jake said quietly, but we're not going there to research history anymore. We're going there to gather every piece of evidence we can find about this betrayal, and then we're going home to tell our people exactly what the Galactic Council really thinks of humanity. Danny nodded, understanding that everything had changed in the space of a few hours. Humanity was no longer seeking acceptance from their galactic neighbors. Now they were preparing for war. Intelligence Officer Maria Rodriguez received Captain Morrison's encrypted message while she was reviewing routine reports at the Earth Defense Command Center on Luna Base. The message was brief but urgent, requesting immediate investigation into all Council-related activities on human worlds, using the highest security clearance available. Maria had worked with Jake Morrison before, and knew he would never make such a request without serious cause. Within 2 hours, Maria had assembled a small team of trusted analysts and begun what would become the most important investigation in human history. She started with the obvious targets, examining communication patterns between human colonies and their assigned Council liaison officers. What she found in the first day of investigation made her stomach turn. Every human colony had been assigned what the Council called integration specialists, friendly aliens who helped new settlements establish proper infrastructure and social systems. Maria discovered that these specialists had been systematically mapping human population centers, industrial capabilities, and defensive installations. The reports they filed were not administrative documents but detailed intelligence assessments prepared for military purposes. Dr. Kevin Stone was working late in his laboratory at the new Geneva Medical Research Center when Maria's team contacted him. As head of xenobiology research, Kevin had been collaborating with Council scientists on what they called beneficial genetic treatments for human colonists. The treatments were supposed to help humans adapt better to alien environments and reduce the risk of genetic diseases. Maria's investigation revealed that the treatments were actually designed to reduce human fertility rates by 30% over 3 generations. The compounds being introduced into human genetic systems would not show obvious effects for decades, ensuring that by the time anyone noticed the population decline, it would be too late to reverse the damage. Kevin stared at his research data with growing horror as he realized what he had been helping to accomplish. Thousands of human families on colony worlds had already received the first round of treatments, believing they were protecting their children's health. Instead, they had been unknowingly participating in their own species' gradual extinction. How could I have missed this? Kevin whispered to his research assistant, Dr. Amy Foster, as they reviewed the molecular structure of the treatments. The fertility inhibitors are hidden inside compounds that actually do provide health benefits. It's brilliant and evil at the same time. Amy looked at the data and shook her head in disbelief. They made sure we would see positive results in the short term, so we would never question the long-term effects. Kevin, we need to contact every colony that received these treatments immediately. Meanwhile, Commander Lisa Parker was conducting her own investigation aboard the orbital defense platform Guardian Station. Maria had asked her to examine the advanced shield technology that the Council had gifted to human defensive installations. The shields were supposed to represent the pinnacle of defensive technology, capable of protecting entire worlds from attack. Lisa's engineering team discovered that the shield generators contained hidden subroutines buried deep in their operating systems. These subroutines could be activated by a specific signal pattern that would cause the shields to not only shut down but actually reverse their polarity, turning defensive systems into weapons that would bombard the very planets they were meant to protect. "Commander, look at this," said Chief Technician Bob Turner as he displayed the hidden code on his screen. The shutdown signal can be transmitted on any standard Council communication frequency. They could disable every human defense system in the galaxy with a single broadcast. Lisa studied the code with growing anger. "Bob, how long would it take to remove these subroutines from all our shield systems?" "At least 3 months, and that's if we work around the clock," Bob replied. "The code is integrated into core systems. We would basically have to rebuild every shield generator from scratch." "Then that's what we'll do," Lisa said grimly. "But first, we need to figure out how to make it look like the systems are still vulnerable while actually protecting them from remote shutdown." Maria's investigation expanded as more evidence emerged from multiple sources. The pattern became clear within a week of intensive research. Every gift, every piece of technology, every friendly gesture from the Council had been carefully designed to either weaken humanity or provide the means for their eventual destruction. The Council had even manipulated human expansion into space by suggesting specific worlds for colonization. Maria discovered that all recommended colony sites were located in strategically isolated positions that would make them easy to blockade and difficult to defend. The trade routes the Council had helped establish were designed to make human worlds dependent on alien supply lines that could be cut off at any time. "They've been playing us from the very beginning," Maria reported to Admiral Ryan Clark during an emergency briefing at Earth Defense Command. "Every single interaction we've had with the Council has been part of a plan to set us up for destruction." Admiral Clark listened to the evidence with growing fury. As commander of Earth's space forces, he had personally overseen the integration of Council technology into human ships and defenses. Now he realized that every system had been compromised from the start. "How long do we have?" Admiral Clark asked. According to the intercepted communications Captain Morrison discovered, the sterilization phase is scheduled to begin within 6 months, Maria replied. They plan to release a bioweapon disguised as an emergency medical treatment for a manufactured plague outbreak. Dr. Stone's voice came through the communication link from his laboratory. "Admiral, I've analyzed the genetic treatments already distributed to our colonies. The fertility inhibitors are already active in the genetic systems of over 50,000 colonists. Even if we develop a treatment to reverse the effects, we're looking at permanent damage to our population growth." The magnitude of the betrayal hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. Humanity had trusted their alien allies completely, and that trust had been turned into a weapon against them. Worse, the timeline for humanity's destruction was already in motion and might be impossible to stop. "Admiral, there's something else," Commander Parker reported from Guardian Station. "We've detected similar hidden subroutines in the navigation systems of human ships that have been upgraded with Council technology. They could potentially take control of our entire fleet if they wanted to." Admiral Clark stood up slowly, his face showing the kind of cold determination that had made him one of humanity's most respected military leaders. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are not dealing with a political disagreement or a diplomatic misunderstanding. We are dealing with an enemy that has spent decades preparing for our complete annihilation while smiling at us and calling us friends." Maria nodded grimly. "The question now is what we're going to do about it. The Council has been planning this for 40 years. They have us outgunned, outmanned, and surrounded. They control the technology we depend on and the supply lines that keep our colonies alive." Admiral Clark looked around the room at the faces of some of humanity's best and brightest, seeing the same cold anger in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. "Then we're going to have to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless than they ever imagined humans could be. The investigation had revealed the scope of the Council's betrayal, but it had also revealed something else. Humanity was not going to die quietly. Admiral Ryan Clark stood before the emergency assembly of Earth's military leadership in the secure briefing chamber beneath the Pentagon. Representatives from every branch of human defense forces had arrived within hours of receiving his coded summons. The room held the most powerful military minds in human space, and every one of them was about to learn that everything they believed about humanity's future was a lie. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to tell you will change everything, Admiral Clark began, his voice steady despite the rage burning in his chest. 48 hours ago, we discovered that the Galactic Council has been planning humanity's complete extermination since our first contact. Every treaty we signed, every piece of technology they gave us, every friendship we thought we had built was part of an elaborate plan to weaken us before they destroy us. The room erupted in shocked voices and angry questions until Admiral Clark raised his hand for silence. He spent the next hour presenting the evidence that Maria Rodriguez and her team had gathered. Communications logs, genetic analysis reports, hidden software codes, and strategic assessments painted a picture so horrifying that several officers had to excuse themselves from the room. General Paul Mitchell, commander of Earth's ground forces, was the first to speak when the presentation ended. Admiral, are you telling us that every human colony is currently defenseless and that our own people have been poisoned with genetic weapons? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Paul, Admiral Clark replied. The Council has been methodical and patient. They've spent decades putting all the pieces in place for our destruction, and they're planning to begin the final phase within 6 months. Captain Sarah Brooks, who commanded the reconnaissance fleet, leaned forward in her chair. What about our intelligence networks? How did we miss something this massive? Because they're better at this than we are, Admiral Clark admitted. The Council has been playing this game for over 1,000 years. They've eliminated 17 other species using the exact same strategy. We were just the latest target. The anger in the room was becoming a living thing, feeding on itself and growing stronger with every piece of evidence. These were humanity's defenders, and they had just learned that they had failed in the most fundamental way possible. They had been protecting their people from imaginary threats while the real enemy had been invited into their homes. Colonel Lisa Turner, head of Special Operations, stood up abruptly. Admiral, with respect, I don't care how good they think they are at this game. They made one critical mistake. They let us find out about their plan before they finished it. What are you suggesting, Colonel? Admiral Clark asked. I'm suggesting that they're about to learn what happens when you threaten human children, Lisa replied, her voice carrying a cold promise that made everyone in the room pay attention. They think they know us, but they've only seen us when we were trying to be diplomatic and peaceful. They've never seen what we're really capable of when we stop pretending to be civilized. Over the next 3 days, word of the Council's betrayal spread through human space like wildfire, despite attempts to keep the information classified. Military personnel told their families, who told their neighbors, who told their friends. Within a week, every human in the galaxy knew that their supposed allies were actually planning their extinction. The reaction was unlike anything in human history. The betrayal cut deeper than any military defeat or natural disaster, because it involved trust that had been freely given and deliberately destroyed. Humans had opened their hearts to alien friends who had been planning their murder from the very beginning. Captain Sarah Brooks led a series of reconnaissance missions to map Council military positions throughout human space. What her teams discovered was even worse than expected. The Council had hidden weapons platforms disguised as research stations in orbit around every major human world. Supply depots that were supposed to support human colonies actually contained invasion forces waiting for activation. Orders. They've been preparing for a coordinated attack on every human settlement simultaneously, Sarah reported during a strategy meeting at Fleet Command. We're looking at orbital bombardment platforms with enough firepower to crack planetary surfaces. They weren't planning to just kill us, they were planning to erase every trace that humanity ever existed. The scope of the preparation for human extermination became clear as more intelligence gathered. The Council had positioned forces to cut off every trade route, blockade every human world, and eliminate every ship in the human fleet within hours of giving the activation order. They had planned for total annihilation with no possibility of human survivors escaping to warn other species. Dr. Amy Foster and her research team had been working around the clock to reverse engineer captured council technology. What they discovered changed everything about how humanity viewed their own capabilities. "Admiral, you need to see this," Amy reported during an emergency briefing. "We've been analyzing council equipment and comparing it to our own technology. The truth is that human engineering actually exceeds most council species in several critical areas." Admiral Clark studied the technical reports with growing amazement. "Are you telling me that our technology is more advanced than theirs?" "In many ways, yes," Amy replied. "We advance faster, adapt quicker, and innovate in ways they never expected. That's why they were so afraid of us. They weren't planning to destroy a primitive species. They were planning to eliminate their replacement. As the galaxy's dominant power, the revelation that humanity was actually more capable than their enemies transformed the rage burning through human space into something far more dangerous. The betrayal had hurt because humans thought they were weak and needed protection from stronger allies. Learning that they were actually the strongest species in the known galaxy turned that hurt into cold, calculating fury." Engineer Rick Johnson, head of weapons development at the Mars Defense Complex, began receiving unlimited funding and resources for projects that had been theoretical just weeks before. "Admiral, if we're really as advanced as Dr. Foster says we are, then I can give you weapons that will make the Council regret ever hearing the word human," Rick promised during a late-night planning session. "What did you have in mind?" Admiral Clark asked. "Something that will make sure this never happens to any species ever again," Rick replied. "The Council has been doing this for 1,000 years, because no one ever fought back hard enough to make them stop. I'm going to give you the tools to make them extinct." The transformation of human space from peaceful colonies to military fortresses happened with stunning speed. Factories that had been producing civilian goods retooled for weapon production. Research centers that had been studying alien culture began developing new ways to kill aliens instead. Children who had been learning alien languages in school started learning military tactics. Most importantly, the fundamental nature of humanity began to show itself for the first time since joining galactic civilization. Humans had been trying so hard to fit in with alien society that they had forgotten what made them unique. The betrayal stripped away all pretense and revealed the species that had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain through intelligence, aggression, and absolute refusal to surrender. The Council had awakened something that had been sleeping since humanity reached the stars. They were about to learn why humans had no natural predators on their homeworld. General Paul Mitchell stood in the war room at Colorado Springs Command Center, watching the largest military operation in human history take shape on the holographic displays around him. 3 months had passed since the discovery of the Council's betrayal, and every hour of that time had been spent preparing humanity's response. What was forming was not a defensive strategy or a diplomatic solution, but something far more absolute. Colonel Lisa Turner entered the room carrying the latest intelligence reports from reconnaissance teams operating throughout Council space. Her expression was grim but satisfied as she approached the planning table where General Mitchell and Admiral Clark were reviewing target lists. "Paul, we've identified every Council military installation within 1,000 light-years of human space," Lisa reported while spreading out the tactical maps. "The good news is that they never expected us to go on the offensive. So their defensive positions are designed to contain us, not protect themselves." General Mitchell studied the maps with the eye of someone who had spent his entire career learning how to destroy enemy forces. "Lisa, what you're showing me is that they've spread their forces thin across multiple systems because they assumed we would stay put and wait for them to attack us." "Exactly," Lisa replied. "They positioned forces around our worlds to prevent escape, but they left their own core systems lightly defended. They're so confident in their plan that they never considered the possibility we might strike first." Admiral Clark joined the conversation while reviewing fleet deployment schedules on his personal tablet. "The reconnaissance data confirms what our strategic analysis predicted. The Council operates on the assumption that younger species are naturally defensive and will always react to threats, rather than creating them. The transformation of human military thinking had been remarkable to witness. Within weeks of learning about the betrayal, every branch of human defense forces had shifted from protection-based strategies to offense-focused planning. The change was so fundamental that even experienced officers had to relearn basic tactical concepts. "Engineer, Rick Johnson arrived at the command center carrying a sealed case that contained the prototypes for humanity's new weapon systems. Rick had been working 18-hour days since receiving unlimited resources for his research projects, and the results exceeded everyone's expectations. "General, I need to show you what we've accomplished," Rick said while setting up a secure communication link to his laboratory on Mars. "The weapons we've developed aren't just more powerful than anything the Council has. They're designed to send a message that will be understood across the entire galaxy." The demonstration that followed changed the mood in the room from determined anger to cold anticipation. Rick's team had created weapons that combined human innovation with reverse-engineered Council technology to produce effects that bordered on the impossible. Kinetic projectiles that could punch through planetary shields, energy weapons that could disrupt enemy ships at the molecular level, and, most importantly, communication jammers that could prevent the Council from coordinating any kind of response. "Rick, how quickly can you produce these weapons in the quantities we need?" Admiral Clark asked after reviewing the technical specifications. "The production lines are already running at full capacity," Rick replied. "We'll have enough weapons to equip every ship in the human fleet within 6 weeks. After that, we can start producing the really nasty surprises I've been designing for their homeworlds." General Mitchell looked at the weapons data with professional appreciation. "These aren't just military tools, they're instruments of policy. When we use these, we're not just defeating the Council. We're making sure that every species in the galaxy understands what happens when you threaten humanity." The scope of the operation that was taking shape went far beyond anything humans had ever attempted. Every Council world, every space station, every military installation, and every government center would be hit simultaneously. The goal was not just to win a war, but to completely eliminate the Council's ability to threaten any species ever again. Colonel Turner brought up the most sensitive part of the planning process. "Paul, we need to discuss what happens to the Council species themselves. We're talking about billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Do we limit ourselves to military and government targets, or do we go further?" General Mitchell considered the question while looking at the intelligence reports describing what the Council had done to 17 other species over the past 1,000 years. Lisa, the Council made their choice when they decided that genocide was an acceptable tool of policy. We're going to give them exactly what they planned to give us. The decision that followed would define humanity's place in the galaxy for centuries to come. The operation would not distinguish between Council military and civilian targets, because the Council's own plans had made no such distinction for humanity. Every Council world would face the same fate. They had planned for human colonies, Admiral Clark coordinated, with fleet commanders across human space as ships and crews prepared for the largest military deployment in galactic history. The human fleet had grown from a small collection of exploration vessels to a formidable force during the months of preparation. New ships built specifically for war were joining older vessels that had been retrofitted with the latest weapons. "Admiral, the fleet commanders are reporting ready status from all sectors," Captain Sarah Brooks reported from her position at the communications console. "We have over 800 ships armed and positioned for simultaneous attack across Council space." "What about the timing?" Admiral Clark asked. "We need every strike to happen within the same hour, to prevent any Council forces from warning each other or coordinating a response." "The chronometer synchronization is complete," Sarah replied. "Every human ship in the galaxy will receive the attack signal at exactly the same moment, adjusted for light speed delay. The Council won't know what hit them until it's already over." The final piece of the plan involved the political response that would follow the military action. President Kate Wilson had been working with diplomatic advisors to prepare humanity's statement to the galaxy. But the message was simpler than traditional diplomatic communications. "General, the President wants to review the final operational timeline," Admiral Clark announced while connecting to a secure channel from Washington. President Wilson's face appeared on the main screen, and her expression showed the same cold determination that had taken hold of every human leader. "Madam President, we're ready to proceed on your order," General Mitchell reported. "Every target has been identified, every ship is in position, and every weapon is loaded. The only thing left is your decision on timing." President Wilson looked at the assembled military leadership with the weight of species survival on her shoulders. "General, the Council contacted us yesterday demanding that we begin compliance with their integration protocols. They want an answer about whether humanity will accept their medical treatment program. What did you tell them? Admiral Clark asked. I told them we would give them our answer in 72 hours, President Wilson replied. That should give us enough time to make sure every human ship is exactly where it needs to be. The room fell silent as everyone realized that humanity's response to the Council's demands would not be delivered through diplomatic channels. Instead, it would be delivered by the largest military strike force in galactic history. The answer was forming, and it would change everything. Admiral Ryan Clark stood on the bridge of the flagship Earth's Fury as the combined human fleet waited in the darkness between stars for the signal that would change galactic history forever. 837 ships hung motionless in space, each one positioned to strike at Council targets across 1,000 light-years of territory. The largest military operation in human history was about to begin. Admiral, we're receiving the final synchronization pulse from Earth Command. Captain Sarah Brooks reported from her position at the communication station. All fleet commanders confirm ready status. Weapons are armed and targets are locked. Admiral Clark checked the chronometer display that showed the countdown to coordinated attack. 72 hours had passed since President Wilson promised the Council an answer to their demands for human compliance. The answer was about to be delivered in a way that would ensure the galaxy never forgot it. Admiral, incoming priority transmission from the Council High Command, Communications Officer Pete Williams announced. They're demanding immediate response to their integration protocols. Put it through, Admiral Clark ordered while straightening his uniform one final time. The main screen flickered and showed the familiar face of High Council member Vorthak, the alien leader who had signed humanity's death warrant in the intercepted communications. Admiral Clark, your species has failed to respond to our generous offer of enhanced medical treatment, Vorthak said with barely concealed impatience. The Galactic Council requires immediate compliance with established integration procedures. Your people will report to designated treatment centers within 48 hours or face consequences. Admiral Clark looked directly into the alien's eyes and spoke, with the calm voice of someone who held absolute power. High Council member Vorthak, humanity has prepared our response to your kind offer. President Wilson will deliver our answer personally in exactly 17 minutes. Vorthak's expression showed confusion at the unexpected delay, but he nodded curtly. Very well, Admiral. The Council will receive your President's message. However, I must warn you that continued delay will not be tolerated. The transmission ended and Admiral Clark turned to address his bridge crew. Every face showed the same cold determination that had taken hold of humanity during the months of preparation. These were no longer explorers or peacekeepers, they had become instruments of war. All hands, this is Admiral Clark, he announced over the ship-wide communication system. In 16 minutes, President Wilson will deliver humanity's response to the Galactic Council's demands. Our answer will not be transmitted through diplomatic channels. Our answer will be written in fire across every council world in the galaxy. On Earth, President Kate Wilson stood before the emergency session of the Global Defense Council in the Situation Room beneath the White House. Representatives from every human world watched, through secure communication, links as their leader prepared to speak the words that would transform humanity from victims into predators. Ladies and gentlemen, for 40 years we believed that joining the Galactic Council represented humanity's greatest achievement. President Wilson began. We trusted alien species who called themselves our friends and mentors. We opened our worlds to them, shared our technology with them, and allowed them to guide our development as a spacefaring civilization. The President paused and looked directly into the camera that would broadcast her words across human space and beyond. 3 months ago, we learned that every gesture of friendship was a lie. Every gift was a weapon. Every alliance was a trap. The Galactic Council has been planning humanity's complete extermination since our first contact with alien life. President Wilson's voice grew stronger as she continued. They poisoned our children with genetic weapons disguised as medical treatment. They sabotaged our defenses with hidden kill switches in our shield systems. They positioned invasion forces around our worlds while pretending to offer protection. They planned to murder every human being in the galaxy and erase all evidence that our species ever existed. The anger in the President's voice was matched by similar feelings. Across human space as colonists, soldiers, and civilians listened to the confirmation of what they had suspected for months. The betrayal had united humanity in a way that nothing else could have accomplished. The Council contacted us yesterday demanding that we submit to their integration protocols, President Wilson continued. They want our answer to their generous offer of extinction. I am here to give them that answer on behalf of every human being in the galaxy. President Wilson stood up and looked directly into the camera, with eyes that held the fury of an entire species. Our answer is war. The single word triggered the largest coordinated military action in galactic history. Across 1,000 light-years of space, human ships dropped out of stealth mode and opened fire on Council targets with weapons that exceeded anything the aliens had ever imagined possible. The attack was so swift and coordinated that most Council forces never had time to send distress signals. Admiral Clark watched the tactical displays as reports flooded in from strike groups across the galaxy. Admiral, the first wave strikes are reporting complete success, Captain Brooks announced with barely controlled excitement. Council orbital platforms around their core worlds are gone. Their fleet command centers have been destroyed. We're receiving confirmation of successful strikes from every sector. The weapons that engineer Rick Johnson had developed proved to be even more devastating than predicted. Council ships that had seemed invincible were reduced to scrap metal by human kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. Planetary shields that had protected alien worlds for centuries collapsed under the assault of human energy weapons that operated on principles the Council had never encountered. Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different Council species, Communications Officer Williams reported. They're asking for terms. Tell them that humanity doesn't negotiate with species that plan genocide. Admiral Clark replied coldly. They can surrender unconditionally or they can be destroyed. Those are their only options. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 6 hours. Human forces had achieved complete surprise and overwhelming technological superiority. Council military forces that had seemed unstoppable were swept away like debris in a hurricane. The 1,000-year-old Galactic Council ceased to exist as a political entity before most of its member species even understood what was happening. President Wilson's second broadcast came 12 hours after the attacks began. This time she was addressing not just humanity, but every intelligent species in the galaxy. To the former members of the Galactic Council, you have seen what happens when humanity is betrayed. Your leaders planned our extinction, so we have given them extinction instead. To the species that were oppressed by the Council, you are now free to determine your own destiny. Humanity offers alliance to those who choose cooperation and destruction, to those who choose aggression. We will never again allow any organization to threaten the existence of innocent species. To any who would follow the Council's example, remember this day. Remember that humanity does not forgive genocide. Remember that we do not show mercy to those who threaten our children. Remember that our answer to betrayal is absolute. Within months, former Council species began approaching human worlds not as conquerors or rulers, but as equals seeking alliance with the galaxy's new apex predator. The age of the Galactic Council was over, and the age of humanity had begun. Humanity's rage had been ignited, and their answer had changed the galaxy forever.